Hello everyone and welcome to Planet Zoo. Just to start off this channel, we're going to do a tour of one of my franchise zoos. We're doing this in sandbox mode, but I did build this zoo in franchise mode, and it is the first zoo that I've ever brought to what I would consider to be completion. This is a zoo set in Japan. I call it Starfleet Japan because I'm a big Trek nerd, but here we have a nice view of the zoo from above. You can probably tell it's not that big of a zoo. I wanted to keep it as a small zoo, kind of meant to be like in an inner city. So they had very constrained building areas, and for the most part, I think I've done a pretty good job of keeping it to that feel. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and go to daylight for now, and then we'll worry about seeing it throughout the, we'll look at it at night later on. So, just starting here from the entrance, because it was franchise mode, you kind of have to have the same entry from the beginning, but I went ahead and took off the front of that building and replaced it with a more Asian-themed front area. And then I was going to originally build a wall, kind of like a spoof on the Great Wall of China, but I decided against it and in favor of just placing bamboo in this area and over here as well, just to kind of give that illusion that a zoo wants you to have of not being in the middle of the city. We've got our information and gift shops here as well, right under this covered entrance area. And as you go out, you can start to see some of the areas here. Over here we've got our Sakura Plaza, which is it's pretty much the largest open space that you're going to have in the entire zoo. And over here to each side, actually, we have just a special thanks that I put in because I figured I might eventually be putting this up on YouTube. And so these are the YouTubers that I have found that I had been watching during the construction of this zoo that really kind of gave me the inspiration to build and do what I wanted. And so essentially, if there's anything in this zoo essentially all the beauty of this zoo is because I watched their videos and then was able to take that and move along in my own way. So this is Sakura Plaza here. It has it's actually over water for the entirety of the space, and I thought that was a kind of fun way to do the first major dining area. And also the largest open space in the zoo was just have it over some water with some nice mist over that. And then there are 4 of these around the plaza as well. Each one has 1 food and 1 drink. And so that's how we kind of built that. And most of the areas have just a double stairwell to get in there. There's one area that was a little troublesome getting in, And that was over here at this entrance, so I went ahead and just made it a path with a ramp. But that also actually helps with people, I know Palsley, for instance, is always very mindful of disability access, and that right there actually works out nicely for that purpose as well. So rather than continuing to fiddle with it and fight with it, I just went ahead and left it there as that ADA access, and also kind of a more official entrance with our I picked 3 trees as the kind of theme trees for this zoo, and you'll see plenty of those 3 throughout the zoo. So I think it kind of works out nicely that way. But we're actually going to go this way for our first animals. And so over here we have our first animal habitat, over to the right of the entrance. We've got our babiruses, and one of the things that I try to do with this zoo is if there is an animal statue to go along with the animals, I try to include those around, near the exhibits as well as I could. And here we have our babiruses, and again, I could have done very different edges on this habitat here. We could have done, I could have sunk the habitat in and made more natural barriers, but the whole point was to make it seem more, like I said, inner city zoo. So I went with, for most of the habitats around the zoo, I went with these concrete walls as a conscious design choice, just because that's what I kind of felt that they would use. And it also kind of matched up a little bit better with the walls that I was using in most of the staff and customer areas. So, okay. For a second, we had those guys freaking out on how to move there. Now, next to the bavirusas, we have our, let's see, this is our binturons. And so another thing, you'll notice a lot of these habitats are pretty small compared to what you would see in a lot of other zoos, and that was another purposeful decision that I made. Since the zoo is meant to be that inner city zoo, their space is at a premium. And so the zoo was built up in a way that most of the habitats took up as little space as possible while still being enough for the animals. There's only really one very minor exception to that as we go through the zoo, and I'll point that out when we get there. And one of the other things that I did is I kept the paths on a grid as I was building the zoo. That was kind of, in my head, that was kind of the way to represent the paths being set up as a kind of city blocks. The zoo got a hold of some abandoned blocks within this city and built around them. At least that is what my idea was. So next to the binturons, we have our Chinese pangolins. And these guys, I think, got away with a little extra space compared to what they maybe necessarily need. And they also tend to hide inside plants. And, for some reason, the pangolins in this habitat have managed to hide not only in those bushes, but I've also seen seen once or twice where they've hidden inside this tree stump, or rather this tree trunk. But we do have at least, they're both out right now. So, yeah, we've got that there. Right across from them, we'll go down this path later. I actually kind of want to save that for last because it's the area that I'm most proud of. So we'll go down here for now. Got 3 guesses as to what the animals are with the statues here. But I hope you made those guesses real fast because we're already here. So we've got our Japanese macaques in here. And for the most part, they've been fine. But there was one point, and there's no actual way for them to do this, so I don't know how it actually happened. There wasn't even anyone fixing the habitat at the time, but there was one point when one of them somehow managed to get out of the habitat. I haven't changed anything inside this habitat, and as you can see, there's no escape points or anything. One of them managed to escape, but he was caught pretty quickly, thankfully. But yeah, so this is our Japanese macaque habitat, and they've got, they've got quite a bit of good climbing and trees available to them. And early on, I did have to move this shelter away from the wall because they were able to escape with the shelter, but I moved it and they can't anymore. But yeah, so moving along. We're going to come back to these guys as well. We'll go ahead and come on over to our Indian peafowl on the other side of Sakura Plaza. So I lucked out when I was doing the trading and found a lot of I don't know if they're actually if they actually are albino or if they're just white plumage, but I'm going to call them albino. But yeah, I lucked out and found a fair number of albino peafowl on the market. So that being said, this is one of those habitats that they have exactly as much space as they need. Even one more animal is too much, and they don't like it. Moving on over here, we have our Komodo dragons. And the Komodo dragons were a bit of trouble at first. I wanted to make sure the walls were as low as possible because I don't want to have all of the same things where we have a tall wall and then a window in the middle of it. Sometimes I just want a lower wall like this, or some other way for people to be able to see into the habitat. But the way I originally had it, before I started doing the trim on the sides with all the plants and such, I also didn't have this outside fence here. I had a see-through barrier up here that was one of those metal fences that you see, and I've got another one for some tigers, so I'll show that one in a bit. But what was weird when I was building this habitat, or when I had this habitat, is that apparently the guests can't see through that because they would all stop right here to look at the dragons, and then complain that that the view was terrible. So I eventually ripped that out and put this fence in, and I think it works out nicely enough. If it were a real zoo, I would probably still have that additional barrier there, but all things considered, I would rather them be able to see. So, alas, I'm stuck dealing with the confines of the game mechanics. But right over here we've got our Formosan black bears. And they have one of the larger habitats in the entire zoo. And I kind of made it, I wanted to give them as much privacy as they could get by having all these trees and foliage in the way. But at the same time to keep the visitors happy. I put pretty much all of their enrichment right up here at the front. So that way, if they want to play, then they need to go see the guests. Right up here, we've got the part where it really starts to kind of feel like you're inside a densely packed city. We've got the Red Panda Plaza, which is the second dining area that I made for the zoo, and you can see it's. I put a lot of effort into this area. I've got this order of plants along the outside on both sides, where the guests can go anyway. I've got, I put a fair amount of effort into this little spot here as well, with the Japanese maples and the cherry blossoms. And even the building itself has a decent amount of effort put into it. And that leads us over to its namesake, the Red Pandas. We've got a little bit of it's a fairly small habitat, but it's enough space for them, at least when I put them in. Looks like there's a few more than there were when I originally put them in here, so I might have to go back and fix that now. But in the meantime, they're happy. Over here, this is the barrier piece I was mentioning here, the metal kind of fence piece that they have, and I've just put it in here as a bit of a fall guard. I'll come back to the animals in a moment, but so those fences there were over by the Komodos, and they just apparently guests can't see through them. Here we have our greater flamingos, and they are, they have a fairly small habitat, or a fairly large habitat, I should say. And it took a bit of fiddling with the water, but I think I got that just right. They are. Now they're pretty happy with it. Now, obviously, the mechanics of the game don't work with this, but I did do a little bit of fun design here. Note the drain here. We're going to go across the path to our Indian rhino habitat. And we'll come over here. This was one of the special barriers that I did. So we've got our Indian rhinos in here, and we've got where that water drains to right here for the Indian rhinos, and then another drain there. Now the rhino habitat I tried to make as open as possible for the most part. And I think I did a pretty decent job of making a fun little area for them. But that drain there, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the third habitat that drain goes to. Right here, we've got another water feature that eventually goes down there. And in this habitat, this is where we've got our Bengal tigers. So, that was a fun, that one just climbed down, nice. So I thought that was a pretty fun little design consideration, even if the game doesn't technically work that way, just to have the same water used in those three areas. Now, we're going to go ahead and keep going back this way. Past our red pandas, and we'll see our Siberian tigers. They don't have guests going over them like the Bengals do, but they've got a nice little area here. Come by, sit down, relax, and the guests can take a look over here. Or if the tigers want, they can go hide behind the trees back there. Right now it looks like we've got 2 cubs and 2 adults in here, so that's changed. The last time I really looked over here, we didn't have any of the cubs, so yay, conservation and breeding. Next door to the tigers, we have our Bactrian camels. This is the only desert animal we have in the zoo. And so it's also the most sparsely foliaged area in the zoo. Especially since right across from them, we're right back to the rainforest with the Malayan tapir. These tapirs actually ended up being tricky to get in just because of where I was trying to put them in. I had to kind of adjust this end of the habitat a lot when I was first getting them in here. But we've got just enough space for them. And I promise they are actually happy with the area. There's 3 of them right now, so that's why the space is just a little too small. But as soon as the baby grows up, we'll be able to send them out and then they'll be happy again. But I promise they are happy with it when there's not 3 of them. And as you see, it's still in the yellow. They're okay. But yeah, so we'll move on down here. We've got our employee area down there, and then we've got, this is, I had a lot of fun with this. Obviously, in the real world, you'd be able to see through these. The guests don't ever actually look through the bamboo, though. It blocks vision, so that's kind of annoying, because over here, I put this nice little viewing area so people could look down into the habitat, and no one ever comes over here because they can't see the animals in there. But that being said, I do still like this little viewing nook, is what I am calling it. And it's got a nice little panda thing. I got that off the workshop. I don't remember the name of the person who posted it, but if I remember, I will go back and edit in names, or maybe I'll do a add-on to the end of the video here. But yeah, so that was that came from the workshop, and I'll try and remember to give credit for that, proper credit for that when I am done. We've also got our panda bar here. This is entirely drinks at this end, because it's a small enough zoo that I don't need food everywhere, but people were getting really thirsty by the time they got to this corner of the zoo. So that's that. But yeah, then we move through here, and we've got the guests clogging up the pathway up here, and probably the pandas hiding underneath. We've got as much, I put as much bamboo as I could while still having decent viewing areas along this path. But not, there's still a lot of people up there. But we've got 3 pandas. So we've got our little snowy area for them over here, and then we've got these 2 here, and the baby is over here. There he is. Oh, wants to go be with one of the parents, apparently. Oops. Little accidental pun. Don't worry. I will generally make those on purpose. But yeah, I also gave them a nice little pool to just to kind of relax in it or around if they want to. And I like this habitat. Yeah, it's a nice little area for them. We move on here. We've got our doles in here, and they've got quite the pack now. I originally only had 2 of them, and they've had their babies and have now grown up, so they've got quite the pack now. I guess I'll have to go in and make sure that there's no inbreeding going on later on, but that'll be a task for after the tour. And then over here we have, right across from them, we have our, we have some of the last animals that were brought into the zoo, the snow leopards. And people littering, because of course they are. And magic money that can just fly backwards. So we've got our, we've got some nice trees around here for them, nice Himalayan birches for for them, and some pine trees for the, climbing down the tree there. For the snow leopards, and they are happy with with just the trees for having all the climbing requirement met, which was a little bit of a surprise, but hey, I'm not going to complain. We've got this, then the path comes over here to see our other leopards, our clouded leopards. There's one of them. Both the clouded leopards and the snow leopards, as well as the pandas, have their shelter as being the path. Oh, hey. And there's one of them right there. But this one also has a lot more foliage for them to hide behind as well, since they actually live in the jungle. Now coming out from this area here, we've got our little employee area there. A nice little centerpiece cherry blossom here to kind of break up the path a bit. And then we have our Indian elephants. Now I mentioned that I had one habitat that was too small, and that is this one. It is just inside the yellow. I built the path around it, and it was a good path, and then I fiddled with the edges over here forever to try and get them as much space as I could. But unfortunately, they are stuck in the yellow. And fortunately, they're all napping right now. We've got, 5 Indian elephants in here, though. Keep wanting to say Asian elephants, which I think is also technically another name they're called, but at least in-game they are Indian elephants. So they've got a nice little area here. It's just inside the yellow when there's 3 adults. And it's one of those, that came to a design consideration of, I didn't think that, it was, the zoo had to kind of make do with the area that they had. So, technically there's just enough space for them to be okay, so that's kind of what we've got. We've got our proboscis monkeys over here. And, there's a number of them now. There used to be only 3 or 4, I think, was the original number. And then down that way we've got our flamingos and our monkeys in Sakura Plaza again. That kind of shows you just how small this zoo really is. We've barely been gone from that area for very long, and here we are again. We've got our Himalayan brown bears right across from the Indian elephants. And their nice little cold habitat. I know there's at least one cub in here somewhere. I just don't know where the cub is. Actually, they might not have any cubs anymore. There was a cub at one point. And then we have our sun bears right next to them. The sun bears actually, story-wise, the zoo kind of had to buy some extra land in order to give the sun bears enough space. Because originally the idea was for it to be about the same size as that Himalayan brown bear habitat, which would put the back end of the habitat right here at this wall. But they need so much space that I actually had to expand way back here to give them enough space. So actually, as a result, a lot of the time our sun bears our sun bears end up staying back here, even though I have all their enrichment items and food up here. So the fact that we're actually seeing one is pretty surprising, to be honest, that we see one up here by the guest areas. Because again, they just hide most of the time. And apparently they climb through the climbing. That was interesting. And then we've got our Sun Bear Diner. I need to change the spelling on that. That should be 2, I think. 2 N's. Anyway, Sun Bear Diner in here. This is this is the third and final dining area in the zoo. It's sectioned off from most of the rest of the area. And someone's house right there. That's another workshop item, and I'll try to remember to add that on at the end of the video, the credit for the workshop items. Then down here we've got the exit to Sun Bear Diner. We're going to go here first. Here we've got our Bornean orangutans. These are so we've got 3 total species of primates in this zoo. The macaques, the proboscis monkeys, and our orangutans. But that being said, I was showing my friends the zoo when I had just finished it, and this joke kept coming up. So here we've got King Louie, because he wants to be like you. Okay, I'm sorry. I won't sing anymore. But, yeah, so we've got King Louie, the orangutan, and, So turning around, this is the best for last section. This over here is a living roof that I created for a viewing platform, and as you can see, it's got a lot of stones for support underneath it. And kind of the idea here was twofold. One is that it serves as a nice presentation piece, just to kind of show off the foliage in the area and make a nice thing for the guests to see. But also, you could have keepers go up on there and selectively prune different plants and take those as part of the food for the animals. This zoo being where it is doesn't have all that much space for growing food for its animals, so they end up bringing in a lot of it from outside. But with this area, at least some of it can be grown in the zoo itself. Now over here we've got our gharial habitat and their statue. But our gharials are magic gharials, as you can see, because they can walk on lily pads rather than swim through them. maybe that'll be fixed in the game at some point, but for now, we have magical gharials that can walk on lily pads. And plenty of young gharials as well. But I had a lot of fun with designing this habitat and the one next to it. I'm sure you noticed that barrier there. But we're going to go down and see the other fun part of this. I mentioned that was a living roof, and we can come over here and see the gharials as they're swimming around down here. And we've got more support pillars along the way, as well as that stone roof. Rather, stone ceiling for the living roof. Yeah, so this is a nice little viewing area for our gharials and our saltwater crocodiles. So that's what this barrier separates out, is our saltwater crocodiles. And right now we've got our big male, our albino big male, right there, which I don't think I've ever seen him from underwater before. So that's kind of cool that he chose to be down here for this particular video. Yeah. So that's our saltwater crocodiles. We've got another little viewing area for them up here. And there's some more of their young up here. And yeah, so that's the zoo. At least that's the guest areas of the zoo. As you can see, we're back here at Sakura Plaza. We've seen everything during the daylight hours. So now we're going to go ahead and I don't think I'm going to show you everything at night, but I put a lot of attention into the lighting of the zoo. So I am going to put it into nighttime mode, just to show off a little bit of that. So here we are at night. We've got Sakura Plaza, and another one of those pieces that I need to remember to put in some credit for is this piece here in the middle. I know that came from the workshop. I don't remember who did it. But I think it was called Asian Fountain. It doesn't have a name there. But yeah, so that I saw that and I loved it, and I loved it before I even started building this zoo. I didn't know I was going to build this zoo when I picked that up, but I knew I wanted to put it somewhere. I went ahead and lit up the water itself as well, where I could see that added glow, especially for things like our blue lotuses at night. All the signs have lighting hidden away that shines on them, so people know where they're going and all that. Then we've got we have our habitats all lit up, and the lighting coloration was actually chosen very specifically to be red, because the red doesn't really affect the animals all that much, but it lets us see them at night, which was something that I wanted to do. But it turned out a little more on the pinkish side when I did it for the first habitat that I did this for, and I liked how well it matched with things like our cherry blossoms and even the Japanese maple. So I kept it. And it matches with our flamingos very well as well. Or very well too. Yeah, so we've got, and this one here is actually the first habitat I did. Maybe I will show you almost everything. But there's our Komodo dragons, the bears. But I'll show. Got our red pandas in there still, with our Bengal tigers. I actually really like the lighting in the Bengal tiger habitat. I'm also fairly proud of that little cave because they can actually use it. They usually don't, but they can. And then you'll notice a lot of the water I made green lighting just to kind of match that first centerpiece at Sakura Plaza. Got more over here, down here. Yeah, pretty much the entire zoo I did as, I put in as much lighting as I could into the zoo. Partly because I was lazy, which actually ended up making a lot more work, but also because once I realized that it looked really good, I decided to just go ahead and keep the zoo open 24/7 while I was building it. And that was kind of that was a really fun thing to do, was just be able to put it all in and keep the lighting to where people could, have all these nice views. The only other color I did, no, it's all green, never mind. Oh yeah, I did blue at Sakura Plaza and that's it. But yeah, most of the lighting and water is green, as you can see here. So, yeah. That being said, I think that about wraps it up. If you're wondering where all the staff areas are, I know one of my friends had mentioned that when we did the actual tour, unless I pointed it out, they didn't actually see it. So we've got our main staff area right back there, in the center of this first block, and so they take care of all the habitats in this area here, as well as both of these habitats. Or sorry, just the one. And then we've got another staff area back here, and you can see from here you can see the goldenrod. I'm going to go to day now. From here you can see like all the goldenrod along the paths and all that. And that was done intentionally also to just kind of hide the staff areas away. But there's the second area. They take care of all of these animals here, including the pandas and half the tigers. We've got another one back here that takes care of just these 4 habitats here for the bears and the leopards. And then we have 2 more. We've got one back here right behind the Japanese macaques. And they take care of these 4 habitats here. And we've got our last staff area back here. And they take care of all of our animals on this side, as well as the crocodiles and gharials back here. But that was one of the that was a challenge I gave myself, was to essentially try and hide the staff areas away as much as possible without without making it hard for them to do their jobs. And I think I did a fairly good job of that in this zoo. And I've been very proud of how this zoo has come out overall. I put a lot more attention to detail to this area as well, to even these areas here. Like this habitat is the only one that has a wall where the guests can see it. And so I wanted to do something to make it prettier and kind of cover it up a bit. And so we have the ivy and those panels there. I did forget 2 animals. So let's go ahead and go see them while I'm thinking about it. Right across from our Komodo dragons. Again, I kept it to only Asian animals, so there's not, and they don't have very many in the game of this type. So over here we've got our Malayan leaf insects. Well, we did. Apparently they died while I was in the playthrough last time, so I'll have to get some more in. But there's normally Malayan leaf insects in here, and then we've also got our giant forest scorpions in here. This building, as well as pretty much all of the buildings along the edges, except for this one and its twin over there, were built by other people. I loved this one. This was a temple, I think. And so I just kind of came in and hollowed out the interior a little bit. Because they had the person that built this had a lot of rocks, green rocks like this one here, that were down here, and so for my purposes, I needed to not have those, so I hollowed that out and put these 2 exhibits in here, and I really like how the rock work just kind of melds in with the walls of this building too. And so that was part of the considerations for these exhibits. And finally, since you didn't get to see this one I believe was actually pretty nice at night as well. So we'll go to night. Yeah, there we go. So this is what the place looks like at night. And I kind of like that. It's like you kind of just step into this entirely different section of the park. It feels, to me at least, it feels like it belongs, but it feels like it's very different from anything else in the zoo. And I like that. So, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the tour of Starfleet Japan here. So hopefully I will see you all for some other videos. Thank you for watching, and have an awesome day. Alright, and we are back. I went ahead and compiled the buildings that I used from the Steam Workshop, except for one that I couldn't find, so apparently I used it and then unsubscribed from it, thinking it was a different building at one point or another. But here we are. First we have the Asian Castle by Raphnex, available on the Steam Workshop, and it is a fairly simple one. It looks like it's mostly supposed to be kind of a pass-through building, but I ended up using it in the border. Then right over here we have the Asian Highland building by Grasshorn 276. This is the one that you guys saw the 2 exhibits in. But as you can see, I did end up making some pretty significant alterations to the entrance area anyway. Next up is Asian House 2 by Osentimo. I think I'm saying that right anyway. Which is what I've made most of my buildings on the edge of the zoo out of. And then we've got the Asian House by Link's sister, and this one comes with a bunch of staff facilities inside it. I get rid of those if I'm placing things from the workshop, just because I built my own staff areas. But if you think it'll work well in your own zoo, then there's no reason that you would have to get rid of them. I just happened to have other plans for my staff buildings, but I did like this building. Next we have Asian Temperate Planter by Callie Princess, and it's just a nice little planter that I was able to put in to the corner of the Sun Bear Diner. We've also got Asian stuff. No, that's the next one. We have Asian Temple by 360, which apparently is missing a pillar bottom, but that also might just be because of how they built it in their game, and they didn't need it. I don't know. We also have here, we've got one of these in the zoo, only one of them. This is Asian Style Shell by Cloudberry. And then the fountain that is the centerpiece of Sakura Plaza is right here. It's Small Asian Fountain by Rice. Going back for just a moment to this one, the Asian Style Shell by Cloudberry. One slight problem that hopefully will be fixed soon is that we have this piece of the roof over here. So I left a comment on the thing, because it is a good building. So I said, hey, it's a good building. Here's a slight problem. Hopefully they see it and fix it. If not, well, it's not that hard to get into building mode and delete the extra roof that's well away from the building. But yeah, other than that, there were two pieces that I couldn't find, and so that's this one here, the shrine, the little panda shrine. I couldn't find that, so I'm not sure if they deleted it or I randomly unsubscribed from it at some point without realizing it. And I did try and clear out some of my subscribed items that I wasn't using, so that's entirely possible. And then the other one was I couldn't find this Japanese style building. I know that it's meant for as a shell, but I couldn't find it in my subscribed items. So, that being said, it is a good, it's a really good looking building. I wish I could have found it in my subscribed blueprints, but it's not there anymore. So, unfortunately, I can't currently give credit. If I find it later on, I will absolutely update the video description with that. And, yeah. That said, that's the zoo. Have a good day, everyone, and I'll catch you in the next one.